Good evening, everyone, and happy Thursday. We are so excited. I'm Stephanie Skis. I'm with The Novel Neighbor. We're a women-owned and independently operated bookstore located in Webster Groves, Missouri, which is basically St. Louis if you're not familiar. And if you are familiar, you know we all just experienced some wild weather, so I can't think of an even better vibe for reading and getting to listen to authors talk about each other than stormy weather. So I'm really feeling the vibe personally in my own environment this evening. And I hope you are too. We have been looking forward to this event for quite some time. That's fun timing. Just give me a second, everybody. Okay, hello. Really fun timing. Our mail just arrived. It's a little late today, and I obviously have ducks. So sorry about that. And you will not see my face very long, so that will not happen again. But we are so excited this evening. We have been looking forward to celebrating this debut YA for quite some time. And then when we found out who we were going to get to hear her converse with, we were like, this is the perfect virtual event. We can't think of any better conversation partners. So our conversation partners this evening are actually, there's 3 authors. You get like a fun little 2-for-1 price. Emily Wibberley and Austin Siegemund-Broka met and fell in love in high school. Austin went on to graduate from Harvard while Emily graduated from Princeton. Together, they are the authors of The Roughest Draft and Do I Know You, as well as several novels about romance for teens. Hopefully we get a sneak peek at a new one that is in the works. Now married, they live in Los Angeles, where they continue to take daily inspiration from their own love story. And Austin and Emily are here to celebrate our girl of the hour, Kalie Holford, who's a college student studying fine arts in the Pacific Northwest. Rumor has it she had finals week the same time that her book came out. So she is absolutely blowing us all out of the water. She lives with her family and 2 puppies. She loves writing books about messy girls falling in love, teens finding the truest version of themselves, and the power of love stories. Her debut novel, The Last Love Song, is a sapphic YA contemporary inspired by Mamma Mia and features all of those things. It just released on April 9th from Blackstone. So without any further ado, please welcome Emily, Austin, and Kalie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that lovely intro, Stephanie, and the novel neighbor for having us. We don't have a thunderstorm to deal with, but we do have a dog, so we'll see if she makes any appearances. Happy Thursday, as Stephanie said, and we could not think of a better way to be spending it than with our friend Kalie, who we would like to congratulate publicly and live on this fantastic book and this incredible publishing journey. Kalie is a truly impressive person and a dear friend, and so we are very thrilled to be here.
So excited to be doing an event with her. Truly, it's like the highlight of the week for us.
Absolutely. So, hi Kalie. We're gonna make this fun. We know these are stressful, and so we're just gonna let the good times roll. Starting with every author's favorite question, which is, could you please give us a quick pitch of The Last Love Song?
I knew that was coming, and I'm glad you actually have a book, because I have like a photo of my cover right here, but my book's in the other room for some reason.
we got you covered literally.
Yes.
So The Last Love Song is about an 18-year-old songwriter who finds her late country star mother's diary, and it leads her on a scavenger hunt around her small town that she has 1 week to complete before her kind of sort of girlfriend leaves for Nashville.
Amazing.
And everyone, this book is everything you would think that it would be based on that fantastic pitch. It's full of romance, yearning, introspection. It has a great dual timeline, perspective shifting structure. The scavenger hunt element is clever and interesting and developed. We so enjoyed reading it, and not just because we love you, Kalie.
A fun fact is that we actually read this book long before it was published. We read it. Was it before you got an agent? Or when you got an agent?
It was a while ago.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was right before I went on submission, because I remember I remember getting the message from Emily, and I was like, oh my gosh, Emily Wibberley liked my book. This was like before we were really friends back then. I was just like, kind of like, oh my gosh. And then obviously you guys became lovely friends, and you gave me that blurb actually while I was on submission. So that was something that really drew my publisher in too. And yes, that's been the blurb they've been using as their like number one blurb.
It's an honor.
And my sister ran into my room really.
Oh, amazing. I was like, how did it end up here?
I know.
That's
It was really quick. It was impressive.
That's a perfect
So
assist.
we have loved this book for years
Quite some time.
now. And it's just so exciting to see it on shelves. We knew it would be on shelves when we read it. We were like, this is a book. This is going to be on shelves one day. And here it is.
And here it is.
So our first question is, how did you come up with the idea? Where did it start from?
So I had the idea for a really long time before I wrote it. I got the very first idea. I had a really special experience with watching Mamma Mia, and I definitely did draw some inspiration from that, but it was just kind of a quiet day. I went down to see my grandma and my nana, and she was like, okay, let's watch a movie. And she had Mamma Mia recorded, and I'd never seen it. So I was like, okay, sure. And then, of course, I fell in love with it instantly, and I've seen it like 20-something times since. And then in 2018, I went with my mom and my sister, my nana, on an outing to go see the second movie. And I came home and I was like sobbing. And I was like, I want to write something that has that kind of dual timeline, mother-daughter pull, and like really kind of modernize and expand on that and explore that. So there was definitely roots of inspiration within the movie itself. And then when I sat down to write it, I had this idea about this country star who leaves a scavenger hunt for her daughter. And I'm like, okay, these two kind of vibes I was going for actually work pretty well together. So then I started to brainstorm how to put them together, and it became more about the scavenger hunt and the mother-daughter and the country star, and just kind of had those roots of inspiration that I got to use in my pitch. And then obviously folklore came out during the pandemic, so that was my drafting playlist. And yeah, so a lot of really cool inspiration things came into play while I was writing it, but it really did start with Mia and Tori and the scavenger hunt that connected them.
I'm just getting the Mia name now. It's in the title of the film.
Okay, fun fact, I didn't put that together until 2 years after I wrote the book. I don't know how.
That's okay. So
you don't feel
I don't feel bad now that I just 2 years after reading the book.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, one day I was sitting there and I'm like, why did I pick the name Mia? And then I looked at the title and I'm like, oh, that might be how it came.
Wait a minute.
It's a perfect little homage.
Yeah, it is exactly. Kind of right. It's a little nod. That's so cool, and it's great when you can do that, when you can combine different components that work in separate ways into something that really, it's like a 1 + 1 = 3 type situation. Yeah. That's totally the most fun way to ideate. So that takes us way back, a little bit forward. How long did it take you to write this? And I mean, it's kind of a two-parter here. We know you are juggling your writing career with school, which is incredibly impressive. How do you fit that into your schedule? How did you get the manuscript done?
So I started writing it in my junior year, and it was right after school got shut down for COVID. So really none of the school systems really knew what we were doing. So I had a lot of free time. And so I started to write it, and I finished it that summer. And so it took a couple months to write, but it was very sporadic and a kind of interesting process, because I originally wrote the first 20,000 words to enter a mentorship program. And so I wrote that in like 3 days. And then I took a couple weeks off. And then I wrote like another 20,000 words. And then I took a couple weeks off. And that happened for a while until July hit. And then I just spent all of July writing. I finished like right at the end of July, beginning of August in 2020. And then I was actually revising and heavily rewriting the book in my senior year of high school. So that was kind of cool, because I got to put some of those feelings and experiences into Mia's graduation journey.
So what does that look like? Are you like taking a 1 hour homework break to crank out 5,000 words or some ridiculous thing like that? Like how does it work?
How do you fit it in?
I mean, now, yeah, that's kind of how it works. But back
that's
then,
kind of how it works.
Maybe, like, obviously COVID was such a hard time, but I didn't have much homework during that time, because no one really knew how to assign online homework. We hadn't really clued into the online schooling. And so I actually didn't have much homework, so it was a welcome distraction.
Sure. Yeah, you had plenty of time in your hands. Wow, man,
That's incredible.
super impressive.
Okay, so moving on to like, it's so interesting that you wrote this in like little, like, well, not little, big chunks, but over a little amount of time that you would like kind of do 20,000 words. This book has a really intricate structure. So how, with you know, you have Mia uncovering the pieces of her mom's story as she solves clues. Like, did you plan out all the clues? Did you figure them out as you went? Like, how did you structure it?
So I definitely did have it all planned out as I went for this one. I've made a couple of jokes that this one broke my plotter brain and turned me into a pantser.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm getting back to plotting things a little more because my brain needs that. But I had like online cue cards and I color coded them with Mia and Tori, and I planned out both their POVs. And I was like, okay, this needs to be the emotional discovery here, and this clue would pair with that. But I actually didn't have all the clues exactly planned out. I thought I did, but just under half of the clues that actually made it into the final book came in a revision process. So it's kind of a half and half answer. And those were the ones that had to be expanded on and explored more to make it a stronger story. And actually my very favorite clue came during drafting technically, but it ended up with me rewriting my outline on my sister's floor for like 2 hours and then drafting the ending.
Wow. So how did you realize that you had to redo some of them?
So with that really big one at the end, I could just tell that the story, like the ending wasn't hitting the way I wanted it to. And then I got an idea for how I could close it up. And I'm like, okay, that feels a lot more impactful. And with the other ones, it's just some of them were like kind of shortcuts in drafting where I'm like, okay, I'll fill something in here later. Yeah. Or I got suggestions because I have a really lovely network of critique partners, and they were like, okay, your clues are really strong, but this one doesn't really fit into the rest of them. So maybe you should take another look at this.
Huh. That's great.
Yeah.
That's good advice. It's really cool to hear your outlining process too, with your online cards and stuff. Like, it makes sense in hindsight. It's very impeccably organized. And there's a lot you have to keep straight with the two timelines, with the way that you feed out the information as well as the emotions. That leads us to our next question, which is, both of these stories are so strong and these characters and their voices so distinct. We're going to ask you to play favorites. Did you have either of Mia or Tori's perspective that you liked writing better or just different?
I think they were just different. Like, every time I'm asked that, I start to lean toward Tori and then I start to lean toward Mia, because I think that Tori, I discovered her character faster, but I really did love writing Mia's story because I felt like it was what brought it together. So yeah, I think they were just different.
Was one harder than the other?
Mia was a lot harder than Tori. Tori came a lot quicker, I think, because she is so different from me that it was almost like completely out of my own head, where Mia, like, she's very different from me, but there was a lot more to explore in her voice and stuff that cut a little closer to home. So she took a little bit longer to differentiate from my own feelings and really figure out what she had to say and tell.
I would also imagine, like, Tori, like, knows exactly like what she wants. So it's like when a character,
you could just say
is just like really sure of themselves, like, makes it sometimes easier to write. Whereas Mia's whole journey is a journey of self-discovery. She very much doesn't know what she wants, and so you and her are figuring it out at the same time
as you go.
Yeah,
that's very true. Did you ever consider just writing it as one, or from the very genesis was this like, did you want to have two perspectives?
So I always knew there was going to be some form, even if it was just like more epistolary format of double. But I did play around a bit with whether I wanted Mia to be the only one that was like full POV, and whether I just like write diary entries, like Dear Diary kind of style for Tori. Yeah. And that was another critique partner who suggested it, like, okay, you can always like go back and rewrite them. Why don't you write it to get to know the character and point of view, and then see how you feel? And I just, once I started writing it as her point of view, I'm like, okay, these are the diary entries. Like, this feels right. So it was very early on that it was dual POV, like from the moment I started drafting it. But when I appreciating it. I wasn't positive if Tori's would be a full kind of deep dive into her.
Yeah.
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 Well, like, Mamma Mia, we have this question of who Mia's father is. And you said that you planned everything out, like without spoilers, like, did you know from the beginning who her father was? Did that ever change? How did you go about like structuring that romance in the past?
I'll be honest, that one, I was always pretty sure. And I think I did stick with my initial pick.
Mm-hmm.
But because it made most sense for the story. But I did change my mind a couple times while writing it. And I was like, oh, what if I did this? And what if I did this? So there were a couple times where I almost changed it, but I'm like, okay, I think this works better for the story I'm telling and for the characters.
Mm-hmm.
What's so interesting about all of those different possibilities, as well as the two perspectives here, is you've got two romances. You have a relationship in Mia's life, as well as two guys in Tori's.
Yeah.
You've sort of got a spread here, a charcuterie board of different kinds of love stories and tropes, different relationships the characters have. We're curious if you have any preference in which kind you like to write, any favorite tropes or any love story that you found more resonant as you were working on it.
I mean, the mother-daughter love story really did come first and foremost for me. And I think by extension, the grandmas and Mia and the grandma's story was a very special one, because it was like that. I'm very close with both my grandmothers, and it was that kind of cross-generational bond.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, as far as tropes and stuff go, and the romantic love stories in my book, I'm pretty much a sucker for friends to lovers, especially childhood best friends to lovers, and I got that twice. So
yeah,
I love that.
It shows.
Yes. Moving on to the setting, Sunset Cove is such a magical place to escape to. I feel like, it has that Stars Hollow, like, quirky charm, but then it also has this like Dollywood, like homage to a huge singer who like shaped the entire community. How did you create Sunset Cove? Was there something there in mind that you were envisioning as you were writing? Like how important is setting in your process?
I mean, I have a pretty firm love of like little fictional beach towns. That's my favorite. And usually what I always come back to. And so Sunset Cove is probably my favorite one I've ever made, because I did like have some other projects I worked with before this, but Sunset Cove I really fell in love with. And I think it was actually inspired by, I've been to Oregon once, and I definitely wanted to base it off somewhere I'd been, because I do live in Canada, but I wanted to set the book in the States. Mm-hmm. And I went to Cannon Beach in Oregon with my family once, and we just stayed there a couple days and like spent all the time at the beach and in the town, and it was just the coolest little vibe. And so Sunset Cove has a lot of inspiration drawn from that. I was actually, I have a lot of really strong memories from that time, but I was also looking through all our old pictures when I was writing Sunset Cove and kind of falling back into that time, because it was a special time for me. So I wanted to draw inspiration from it, both for setting and like the overall vibes of the town.
I feel like that really comes through. Like it really, you can tell that you have such a love for this place and that it feels really real because you were modeling it off your own experiences.
It's a big compliment to that town in Oregon.
Yes.
I have to say, it comes across very enchantingly. It's really delightful to read about. I mean, it's a setting that functions as a place of such magic and color, and really acts as a central character. Both literally in the scavenger hunt is sort of threaded throughout, but also more impressionistically, its presence is always there. You kind of feel that magic with you every step of that journey. So speaking of footsteps,
nice segue.
There's admittedly a great connection here that we have to ask you. What Mia is wrestling with for much of the story is how much of her mother's footsteps to follow in, how much she wants to, and also fears that path. Your mother, who we adore, is also an author of romance, and so we're curious. What did you draw from a personal perspective into this journey?
Yeah, I think I mean that was definitely a source of inspiration with Mia and Tori sharing like their love for a certain industry and art form. That's something that my mom and I have always had. because I started writing books. I wrote my first book when I was 12, and that's when I started querying. So my mom and I have for a very long time had that connection. And I think something that was a really big part of my journey is my mom was always really adamant that she's like, okay, like obviously I'm here if you need like emotional support or like you need anything, but I'm not part of your journey. You need to make your own path. You need to make your own friends. You need to do this, like your own things. I'll help how I can, but I'm not like getting in the way of your journey. And so that kind of, I really did have to establish my own ideas and path and friends. And that was a really big thing that I had from the very start in my journey. And that was something I wanted Mia to learn, because I think that a lot of the time, like even when I was in high school, I actually, and elementary school, I went to my parents' schools. So I did very well in high school, but I was also the like teacher's daughter.
Yeah.
And that was fun. And I thought that it was kind of interesting a little bit to explore, like when you kind of have this eclipse with one of your parents in a certain area, like how you diverge from them as well, because I think you do have your own independent nature in that, but you also have that deep connection there. And that was something that I wanted Mia to kind of come to realize for herself, that the music isn't fully intertwined with Tori Rose, but there's always going to be a connection between them found inside it.
Yeah, I mean, okay, look, I obviously personally relate. My parents are writers, and my grandfather was also a writer. And it is funny because like each generation for us, we feel very much like Mia, where it's like my dad first was like, I don't want to do anything related to writing whatsoever, because his dad was a writer. And then he ended up doing it anyway. And that was the same thing with me, that I was like, I don't really need to do the exact same thing that my family does. And yet here we are. And so I felt it's an interesting question, and it's very resonant. I feel like you handled it very well. This question of like choosing, she wrestles with like, should I do what my mother does? But also to just not do what she did is also kind of making a decision based on what your mother did. Like if she hadn't been Tori Rose, would Mia have just grown up on stage much more comfortably? You know, that question, it's a very interesting angle to go at. And obviously I really connected with it.
Is it one that you found more as you wrote, or did you kind of from the outset think like that's going to be the central theme? Or did it sort of, I don't know, evanesce out of the story?
I think a bit of both. I think that like in the core of the idea, there was that sense of like, I knew they were both going to be musicians, and there was that kind of inevitability that theme was going to arise. But I think it was something that I really like in the process of writing the story found inside of it, maybe. So yeah, maybe the latter.
Yeah. Well, so I'm going to go a little bit out of work because we talked about being a musician. Why did you choose music? Are you musical, and what was it like writing the original songs in this?
Okay. I did play piano for like 8 years, so I did grow up like playing music. I never wrote like the music to go with it. I always wrote the lyrics. Like I have on my release day, I shared this picture, probably got lost in all the pictures that I was sharing, but it was of me when I was 8 years old with like my homemade songbook writing in the corner.
My God. Yeah, I didn't see that. I'm going to have to look for that.
Pardon?
I didn't see that. I'm going to have to look for that immediately after this call.
I'll send it to you because it was on my story. Maybe I'll repost it sometime. But yeah, so I mean, I was always writing lyrics and poetry and books, and that part of it was really natural when I started writing the Last Love Song. And sometimes I lose the question halfway through answering it.
It was just like, so I asked if you were musical, and then like, was it hard writing the songs, and why did you choose music for the story?
Oh yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I was inclined to choose music. Like books have always been I love music, but books have always been like the role that music fills in Mia and Tori's lives. That's been the role books fill in mine. But when I was writing this during COVID, I was kind of having that a bit of, before I found this book, I had a bit of writer's block because I just finished another project and I just shelved it. And something that I really found solace in that time was music, specifically folklore. And there was really a sense of rediscovery in that music in a really difficult time. And that was something that was a really, really strong touch point for me in that period. So I wanted to write a book that kind of drew on that and centralized that in the characters' lives, the way that stories have always been centralized in mine.
Yeah.
And as far as writing the songs, I think writing the songs was probably the most fun part and the least headache part.
Wow. You're impressive.
Yeah.
Just because I really like some of the songs have stayed the same since the first draft, and but the story very much has not. So
Wow.
that was fun for me. And I mean,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's cool. That's really that's a gift. I'm glad you enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, we did not enjoy writing our own songs.
It's so hard.
Applaud you for just being fearless about that. Wait, how many books have you written? Because you just mentioned that like you had just finished something else and you wrote your first book when you were 12, you said. So how many total have you written?
I think probably 5 now. 5 or 6.
You've been cranking.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really, really impressive.
It's big numbers.
I mean, the last love song is probably the first one that was actually ready for anything. But the others existed. Yeah, but I also just released one of the songs with a friend on Spotify from the last love song. So
cool.
That ties into the musician aspect, I think. She was the musician behind it, but it was pretty cool to be listed as a lyricist because it's from the book and I wrote part of the lyrics.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Everybody, you should go listen.
Yes.
So that touches on one of our questions. I'm glad that was such a fun part. We were curious, what were some of the other best parts about crafting the story and what were the hardest?
Okay. Actually, complete like opposites of each other. The beginning was so hard. I rewrote that thing so many times. It started in so many different places. Originally, it wasn't me as grad gift. Originally, like there were all these weird things that used to happen in the beginning that I'm like, I don't know what I was thinking, but there at one point. And like on the other end of the spectrum, the ending actually was the most fun part of the entire process. I wrote the last 10,000 words in one day because I just fell into the story, and they've actually pretty much not changed since that first draft, and the rest of the story has changed astronomically. So
that's special when that happens,
Yeah.
when you really find the magic.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned the beginnings of stuff is always the part that we get told to revise the most.
Yeah.
It's always the chapters that we have to redo, rework, just oftentimes a completely different premise to the opening few chapters to kind of change up the way things start. So we sympathize.
Yeah.
Whether self-imposed or editorially so, the beginning is rough.
It is. It is.
So can you give us, also everyone should prepare your questions because in 10 minutes we're going to switch to audience questions.
We are.
Can you tell us about your path to publication? You mentioned you've written 5 books. You started querying at 12. Yeah. Tell everyone listening like how, you made the jump from where you were to traditionally published.
So I wrote my first book because my mom and I made a bet. And she was pursuing writing at that time. I mean, she now has like 35 books out. But at that time, she was really actively pursuing it. And she was going to these writers' conferences. And I mean, I think I was nagging her pretty constantly to go with her to one. And there was one she was going to in the fall of that year. So she's like, okay, fine. If you write a book, like, you can come with me. Mm-hmm. And I think she was trying to get me off her back, but I wrote a book and she kept her word. So then she brought me at 12 to this writing conference, and I got to go to workshops and pitch to agents. I was so excited, like sitting in the workshops and hearing people talk about writing. I still vividly remember going. And then, so I did my first agent pitch at that event, and then I started like actually cold querying literary agents when I was 14 with a different book, and that was my first real foray into it. And it's actually funny because the first request I ever got from that, I'm actually now represented by that agent, so that's pretty special.
That's really cool.
And it's been a bit of a windy journey since then. I was 14 7 years ago. Had some books in between, did some mentorship programs. I mean, that shaped my craft a lot. I did 2 different ones with 2 different mentors, or a set of mentors and 1 individual mentor. And then I started writing contemporary and really felt like I found my footing. And then from contemporary, I kind of jumped into The Last Love Song after my first real like YA romance. And The Last Love Song, everything just kind of clicked and it started to feel really right. And I did a lot of work with that book, and I got a revise and resubmit from an agent for that book, rewrote the whole thing, got signed off that book. And then the next year, it took about 9 months on sub, but I got my book deal then. And now, I mean, that was about 2 years and a week ago that I got my book deal, and it kind of hasn't stopped moving since. So that was
fantastic.
Yeah.
Tell us about that 2 year. What has changed the most in the editorial process, and what did you find interesting and invigorating about that process?
Yeah. So I actually had really heavy revisions with my first agent. I signed with her when I was 18, and I signed off of revise and resubmit. So that was already like complete overhaul of the book.
Yeah.
And then midway through submission, I did another complete rewrite, cut about 15,000 words from the book, overhauled it. But by the time it actually got to between my critique partners and that work, by the time it got into my editor's hands, I actually had very minimal revisions from my publisher. So I had about 1 round of developmental edits, just honing in on a couple things. And then I went pretty much into copy edits and line edits and stuff. So that process, I mean, the copy edits and past pages were pretty cool and like unfamiliar process for me. That was interesting.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just interesting to see all the different phases and how they coincided and how they kind of fed into each other.
Do you remember, I mean, I'm sure you do, the moment you got your book deal? Like what was the first thing you did when you got the phone call, the email, whatever it was?
I told my mom. I ran around the house a little bit, and I actually called one of my friends because I was meeting her for the first time. She was one of my author friends who I'd never met before, but we lived pretty close. And I was going to an Olivia Rodrigo concert that night. And so she was actually standing in line because she had tickets for the pit, and she was trying to get a really good spot. And I call her, and she's like, "Hey, what's up? I'm in line." And I'm like, "I'm published." And she's like, "What?" So,
That's why
it's so great.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so texted my mom, screamed, and then called my friend.
And then went to an Olivia Rodrigo concert.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good day.
That's perfect. Okay, speaking of, sort of, if you had to choose one song to represent Mia, Britt, and Tori, what would you pick?
Tori would probably be Long Live by Taylor Swift or The One by Taylor Swift. One of those two. I cheated. I said 2.
That's okay. Against you.
Mia would probably be Secondhand Smoke by Kelsey Ballerini.
Oh, cool.
And Britt might be August from Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
But I'm on that one.
Did you have a writing playlist other than folklore, or was it just folklore?
I do have a writing playlist. I had a couple. There were a couple songs that I actually play a lot of songs on repeat. So when I was doing really heavy revisions, I had Funeral by Maisie Peters on repeat for 4 hours straight.
Oh my God.
I get it though. You get in the zone a little bit. You need the rhythm.
Yeah. So I did have playlists, but I don't always listen to music while I'm drafting. Sometimes I just can't focus on both.
Yeah, I can't.
So it really depends. But I have playlists that I listen to while I do everything else. And there's actually like a kind of official playlist with my most inspiring songs. In the back of the book, there's a QR code to it.
That's so
Very
cool.
cool.
As well there should be, right? It's the whole thing is so rich with music. So we are gonna transition over to our audience questions pretty soon. But first, we want to ask our other favorite question ever, which is, what is next for you in your writing?
I'm working on a couple things. I'm hoping to work on some more YA. I just finished a draft of an adult romantic comedy, so that was an interesting one.
Cool. That's exciting.
Exciting.
That's obviously news to even
Yes.
us.
We didn't
I
know.
thought I probably didn't tell you, but I thought I did. I can message you afterwards.
Yes, please do.
We're very
I want to
excited,
know more about
obviously.
this. Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that I'll have more to share soon on that. I can't share a ton right now, but just kind of de-stressing from debut and falling back in love with the stories I want to tell.
Yeah.
That's essential. I totally understand that.
So we have some questions already coming in.
We do,
So we're going
which
to
is
get
great.
those going. What Mamma Mia song is your favorite?
Oh, that's an awesome question.
Oh, my favorite is probably Name of the Game.
Cool.
I have 2 CDs, one from the first movie and the second movie, and when I was driving around town listening to the CDs, that was the one I replayed the most.
Yeah, that's the ultimate test.
Yes.
It's great.
Okay, and then what advice do you have for fellow young aspiring authors?
I really emphasize usually that I don't think you really there's a lot of advice to wait till you're older, or there's no rush, and there is no rush, and I definitely put some deadlines on myself that I did not need to, but I don't think you have to wait to chase your dreams either. I think it's perfectly valid to start writing books now, start exploring publishing now, and the age doesn't really define the prospective career at any point in your life, and I think that just following that passion where it leads you.
Yeah, I feel like because I do see people try to be like, oh, you should wait, but it's like nobody ever knows if they have everything they need. You could be 30 and be like, I still am not the best writer I'll ever be, but I still want to publish a book.
Yeah.
It's the same. That is true at any point in life, and so it's like if you have a story you want to tell it. Like that, it's valid no matter what your age is.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
That's a great question. So this one is excitingly is actually for all of us. That's pretty cool. We are to answer, what is most exciting to you about YA? And then we'll say the same.
We're all answering that?
Yeah.
You can start.
Okay. For most of my writing journey, I was a teenager, so YA was really what felt right to me. And I'm in my early 20s now, and sometimes still feel like I haven't fully graduated from being a teenager. So YA was a point of really personal love, and also I think there's just so much inherent discovery in it. It's a really monumental period of your life where you are figuring out who you are now and who you want to be in the future and how you get there, but also realizing that sometimes you don't know at all and what you do in the meantime. And I think that it's just a really special time for that discovery, and there are all these feelings that are really prominent, and I think that just some really beautiful stories can come out of that very inherent coming of age vibe of growing up.
Yeah, I would say it's the same. We love the coming of age, and we fell in love in high school. So for us, there's also that nostalgia of young love, and similarly, I was reading exclusively YA up through 24 years old. So I was not even dipping my toe into adult fiction beyond what I was forced to read at school.
Because the feelings are so rich and the stories are so rich, and it's I totally agree with all of that. It's great to write and read about characters who are making some of the fundamental choices that will define them existentially and logistically for the first times. It's those are some opening dice rolls, and it makes the stakes of the story existentially very important.
And then we have been asked, is it difficult to switch between genres? And we would say it's actually great, because sometimes you can get in a little bit of a rut, or you just find yourself kind of telling the same things over, remixing the same ideas. And it's you need something to really excite you and be totally different. And it refills the well. When we write an adult romance, and then we're ready, when we return to YA, we're oh yay, this is so different. It's so much fun to just do something completely different.
Yeah. And stylistically, it's not as distinct as one might
At least
think.
the way we do
the way
Yeah.
we write it, which is less of a reflection on our adult work and more a reflection on how we treat our teenage characters and their mindsets, very similar to how we would adults. We kind of think that it's often forgotten by writers who write across genres that teenagers are very fully formed philosophically, emotionally, and they can speak and think.
They're writing and publishing books.
I mean, right. So it's do you remember being a teenager? Like, you're not actually that different than you are now. You're pretty self-aware and pretty focused. And so you can kind of write those characters with a, very full.
But some people just
voice.
write a younger YA, and that's
Sure.
just not how
Yes,
we
exactly.
approach
Right.
it.
That's just not our style.
Okay, for all of us, what tropes do you most like to read?
Am I starting us off again?
Yeah, I mean, if you have something off the top of your head.
I'm really big on friends to lovers, and I also love academic rivals to lovers. That's a really big one for me too.
Yeah.
And I mean, always a sucker for only one bed trope. So those are probably like
Always good. Yeah, I mean, we tend to really gravitate towards second chance romance, because we have been together for so long. So like, we like to see characters who have a lot of relationship history between them. It feels very close to home.
Yeah.
What other?
We'd definitely like to read Enemies to Lovers.
Yeah, I love to read it.
And wherever it appears in any of its forms, particularly if they are folks who aren't actually morally and philosophically opposed, but just like circumstances have set them. Yeah,
Rivals.
like I'm thinking of The Artful Dodger, which is not a book, but has a great romance in it, and
it's
it's very
TV
much
show.
powered by characters who have every reason to dislike each other, and so they do, but they're actually very similar.
All right, so this is kind of similar. What is the swooniest thing a love interest can do? Oh man. Swooniest thing a love interest can do. I mean, we just love banter. I feel like if you're just having a character who's very quick on their feet and can really do that, repartee is very compelling.
Yes.
me wondering right now if my boyfriend's actually watching. Thinking carefully about my answer. I think like I'm really drawn to like the kind of little moments in books like that between love interests, and I think that's what I'm drawn to in life, in movies, in books, like forehead kisses or little like hand touches or things like that are just have that quieter kind of intimacy. And I think that is not always like the big like swoony moments, but to me I think that's really swoony and like really real.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's a great answer. It's very good advice to any aspiring writers out there too. Okay, so this is a great question for all of us. What are we most looking forward to with the release of the Tortured Poets Department?
I mean, we love breakup songs.
Yes.
Obviously. So we're very excited to see how many of those. And there's been a lot of speculation. Very curious to see what is actually on the album.
It seems very stylistically similar to Folklore and Evermore. It seems to be a sort of drama-focused, songwriting-focused album, and that is always a mode that we enjoy listening to.
Yeah.
The contemplative mode.
What about you, Kalie?
I mean, I'm Folklore and Evermore for life. Those are my favorites.
Yeah.
So that is really exciting for me because I agreed. I think that it's a similar vibe.
Yeah.
I'm excited for new drafting playlists.
Yes.
Of course you are. You're going to be rocking and rolling. You're going to be knocking out 10,000 words a week again.
And I'm really excited. This is the one song that like they all stand out, and I'm so excited for all of them. But the So Long London one, I'm like counting down for that one because I'm like I'm really curious what this is going to be.
We have some ideas.
There's going to be some good stuff.
Yes, I can't wait.
No doubt.
Soon, a couple hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any interest in writing genres other than romance, like thrillers, for example, or other things? Well, we can start. We actually have. Well, it's too far away to reach. We have our next one. Oh no! Okay, hold on.
It's a little.
We
bit,
gotta.
It's a little bit of a ways away.
Our next YA book is actually more like a thriller than a contemporary romance. There, even though there is still contemporary romance, so that is Eris Takes All, which comes out in a little over a month, and it is about a girl who puts together a crew to execute a heist at her father's third wedding, and it's very fun.
It's very fun.
And then we also have a fantasy coming out in September that we co-wrote with another friend, and that's under the E.B. Asher name. So we love to go into other genres for sure. It's been a lot of fun.
It's it's an answer with an asterisk, because making sure there's a strong love story in these genres is always something very important to us, and also very fun for us. It really is like part of the lifeblood. But yeah, we love experimenting with other kinds of stories.
What about you, Kalie? You said you wrote an adult romance, so it's already a new genre.
Yeah. I mean, one hand, I'm currently debating like how plausible it is to reach through the screen to see the books. They're so pretty. And on the other, yeah, I think I'd like to explore other genres. I mean, I think my heart's in YA contemporary right now, but I also I had a lot of fun with that one, and I really do love fantasy. So maybe I'd love to explore fantasy one day again too.
Was that your first? Was that like the books you wrote when you were younger? Were those fantasy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm sure you'll find your way back to it at some point.
Yeah.
They're always there for you. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So a question for us. We have a book coming out with our dear friend Bridget Morrissey.
This one.
What did that process look like? What it looked like was pretty similar to our group chat for a while. We kind of came up with some of the foundational pieces of the idea, literally just chatting, and then we got on a video call for like a couple hours every weekend and kind of walked through the story.
I would say that it's kind of, if anyone has any idea of what, I mean, maybe you do now because Yulene's book came out, which we were talking before this about Yulene, which is How to End a Love Story, which all my books that I'm referencing are like on the table behind me. That's amazing. This book just came out, which is about a writer's room. And that is kind of how we handled writing our book with Bridget. We kind of just like treated it like we were all in a writer's room together, breaking the story, coming up with the outline, and then we all separated to write the chapters. To give a quick pitch while we're on here it's The Princess Bride meets People We Meet on Vacation, about a group of friends who once saved the world together 10 years ago, but they haven't spoken since, and they reunite on the road to the royal wedding and maybe have to contend with old wounds and old villains and
go on a new quest.
Yeah. Okay, for Kalie, if your leads could be friends with any other fictional characters, who do you think it would be?
Oh, that's a hard question.
I know.
That is a really hard question. Okay, I think maybe I'll pick Wibberley characters because those are on my mind right now because we're talking. I think that Tori would probably really like Kalie. And I feel like Mia, I'm trying to think of who she'd be friends with.
I feel like Mia and Megan would have a lot in common because they're both kind of from these Pacific Northwest towns and they're really into artsy things.
The arts.
Yes.
Yeah. But also figuring themselves out.
Yes, and figuring out what they want out of life.
Yeah, that's a good one. I can see that.
So that's our final question we've received from the audience thus far.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, we do have some time. So people, if you're watching and you're like, oh my gosh, I missed my chance. No way. Okay, you can have a second. If you want to put in any last minute questions. I know that virtual ones are hard because you guys don't get to see the audience, but what I can personally speak to is that you have me cracking up. This has been such a fun conversation to listen to. Kalie, have you ever watched the, okay, sorry, let's backtrack. I love Mamma Mia deeply. I got the DVD, I truly think so. When I was a kid, my mom would give me on Christmas Eve, I got a Christmas Eve gift the morning of, and it was basically a gift that kept me entertained all day while she was trying to make dinner and like wrap the rest of the gifts and stuff. And so one year I got the Mamma Mia DVD because I had loved it in the theater so much. And I truly played it like 6 times in a row. Like I would just like restart the movie. And my family was like, what is going on? Like, what are you doing? And so, Kalie, I don't know if you've ever happened to watch Mamma Mia with the director's commentary on it. But that exists. And point 2 is that you said that one of your favorite songs is What's the Name of the Game, right?
Yeah.
So there's a deleted scene that exists from that song being in Mamma Mia 1 because they the whole thing, she sings it to Bill, and Amanda Seyfried sings it to Bill, and well, I'm like mixing actresses, and but she sings it to Bill, and it was too long, and they cut it. But if that is your favorite, you can go find some OG footage of what they recorded for that song. So that's me weirdly popping in with some Mamma Mia fun facts.
I love it.
Emily and Austin, have you guys seen Mamma Mia? Like how many times? Okay.
Not as many times.
Not as many times as you guys.
We actually watched it.
Kalie and I have that pretty much unlocked. Like it's like fine. Well, I really also went through a Meryl Streep. Like this is how I learned that I love Meryl Streep like deeply, and it's fine. Everything's going great for me personally.
Yeah. Pandemic watch. I remember when I got like food poisoning over the pandemic, and it was like Mamma Mia is the movie for this moment. It's like the movie that will take you through when you just are miserable. Comfort. You just need something that is going to
lift your spirits. Yeah. I know, it really does it. It's a perfect. So, Kalie, congratulations on picking a really great movie. And I do think, like I said that jokingly, but a very like the thing that I remember about Mamma Mia is when I saw it in theaters, like the generations that were there together, particularly like grandmas, moms, and like daughters. And so it really is like a uniting video. So I think movie. So it really made sense that what you did with it and how you put your own take on it. Emily and Austin, we're very excited about some of your upcoming projects. I'm so glad that you got to highlight those. The arcs are out in the world, which I'm sure that you know, but we also we've been waiting for This Will Be Fun, and it finally landed, and we had a fight.
Good, great.
No, there were a couple casual fights with the novel neighbor. No harm was actually done, but there is like a very long wait list to. We were like, can you give us more than one arc? I was like, we'll figure it out.
So
okay.
much.
Any final, Kalie, how are you celebrating? Well, obviously this tonight, but do you have any future plans? Are you going to do anything fun?
Yeah, I'm going on vacation soon to just kind of decompress, and finally going to tackle some of my TBR too.
Oh,
that's always getting back into reading post a release. It's
hard
like
to
a
find
moment.
time.
Yeah, I actually think that's the perfect note to end on. Do you want to share like what is top of your TBR right now?
Oh, see, I always blank that even though I have.
Yeah, you've never read a book in your life. We know. It's really.
It's literally that.
Emily and Austin, you're reading Eulene's book right now. You just said, or like you finished Eulene's book.
It's right here.
Yes.
Yeah. The other convenient books that are right behind you that you're also reading.
There's actually a couple.
There's a lot of books right behind me that are on my list.
This is one I'm reading. Reading soon.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's a good choice.
Yeah, I'm reading. I love Jeddah, so I'm reading that soon. And I've got Eulene's on my TBR stack too.
It's so good. Yeah, Emily and Austin, what's on your radar? What are you going to read next?
Well, okay, I mean, everybody is reading this. This one we just picked up. Of course. Have to pay up, go to the altar of Lee Bardugo.
Whenever we're called.
This is actually a mutual friend of all of us. We've already read it, but I do want to plug it.
Yes.
Gretchen's book, Ellie Haycock is Totally Normal. This book is really wonderful it's like Breakfast Club in a hospital. A bunch of, sick and disabled kids who are totally normal. It's great.
I love that. So my favorite part is that we get to ask authors like what you all are reading and what we need to check out next. And I think it's We all have never-ending TBRs that don't need to be longer, but
Yeah, I know. Gotta add to it.
Well, thank you so much to all of you. You have all been incredible. Emily and Austin, you were amazing conversation partners. Kalie, we're so excited for you. I hope you feel so celebrated and have had the best release month.
Everybody needs to read it. It's so wonderful.
Yes. And if you're not in St. Louis, please don't worry. We can absolutely get you a copy. We ship all across the country. So we can get this book in your hands, or I'm sure your local indie bookstore is also carrying it. If you're not local, definitely go look for it. And if you can't get it from your library, if you don't know, you can request books. You can request that your library picks up a book. So even if you don't see it or you want more copies, the more that you put holds on it, the more that your library knows that's something you're interested in reading. So that's another way that you can support an author. Any final thoughts before we sign off for the night?
I don't
This
think
was
so.
so much fun.
This was so lovely. Thank you all and everyone
Thank
who
you for
came.
having us.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you so much to everybody who is watching. Stay tuned to the Novel Neighbor events page because we definitely try to offer at least 1 or 2 virtual events a month. And there's maybe an event that will involve some people on this live in the future. That will be announced at some later date. I don't know. Who's to say? So thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.